Hi guys, today's video is on the crushed ruff, which is a rudiment to some people. It is a orchestral or concert technique to most people, and it just refers to really short staccato buzz strokes on the snare drum, which I will show a little clip of me doing on a practice pad now. Okay, so you can see I did it with one hand and then I did it with two hands, and both exist, and some people will advocate for either one or the other, or sometimes both. Those two things maybe have different names, but maybe have the same name depending on who you ask. And as far as the name, that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, because I call it the crushed ruff. I think that's probably the best name for it, but you can also call it a press roll, a crush stroke, a zut, a dry buzz, a crushed buzz, a short roll, or a short buzz. And I think there might even be other names out there, but those are some of the common ones. When we talk about this crushed ruff or press roll concept, we mean rolls that are very, very short. So like I demonstrated, but when you see that in notation, what you mean is it's either like a 16th note roll, or an 8th note roll that is untied, or potentially a quarter note roll that is staccato, or something of that nature where you know it's going to be a really short roll and it's not really going to connect to whatever comes next in the music. Now, as usual, I went off the deep end looking up the literature, books and articles that deal with the naming of this and the execution of this technique. And you can find, I think, 22 different examples easily. There probably are more, but I think there are 22 that are pretty obviously available. And they run from 1917 all the way up to 2021. So really over like 104 years. So a lot of the people on this list of 22 sources that I consulted over those 104 years are pretty well regarded. We're talking about Anthony Cerrone, we're talking about Benjamin Podemsky, Garwood Whaley, Edward Freytag, Carl Gardner, Ed Strait, Herlin Riley, Buddy Rich for a really famous one. These are people who seem to know what they're talking about. As far as names, we seem to have three competing names with sort of top billing. Again, the crushed ruff, the press roll, or the crush roll. If you sort of combine all this together, though, you see that there are 15 different names with the term crush in it, whether that's crushed ruff, crush roll, crush buzz, crush stroke, which you can kind of smush those all together into one thing if you want, the sort of crush category. There are only, again, like 5 mentions of press roll, which people seem to commonly talk about, but it's really not that popular in published literature. Then if you talk about technique, which is the other half of this thing, aside from what you call it, we're talking about there's either one hand or two hand. And of these 22 instances, 15 different people say that you should play it with two hands, while basically only 6 call for a single hand buzz. And it's interesting because of those 6 dogs, so of the 6 instances of a single hand recommendation, there are actually 5 of them between 1969 and 1996, which is a 27-year span. So it seems like in the middle to late 20th century, there was a period of time when people were really into pushing the one-handed buzz concept. But before that and since then, it's really not commonly talked about, right? So maybe it was like a little bit of a fad. If we just take this as a poll and see what does the average drum teacher say about this, I'm going to say that we call it a crushed ruff and that we play it with two hands. That's just sort of what wins the contest here. Again, it could have been crush roll because there were about the same number of opinions that advocated for that name. But here's the problem. Crush roll, and actually press roll as well, a lot of people associate with the regular long form multiple bounce roll, and so it's confusing whether you're talking about that or this shorter concept. The crushed ruff doesn't really apply to any other things, so that term is a little bit more specific, and therefore I think it's better. And it does have the crush in it, which we know is like the most popular term for any of this. And then I say two hands because, again, it's like 15 of 22, so it's well over half. But realistically, I think that there is room to play it with one hand, especially if you're playing at a faster tempo or you have a really dense, notey section where you got to toss one of these into the middle of other stuff. So in short, it doesn't really matter what you call it. You can play it with one hand, you can play it with two, as long as it's a short, unconnected, sort of staccato buzz stroke. But again, I'm going to call it a crushed ruff, and I'm going to say you should play it with two hands, just because that's what the literature sort of suggests when you sift it out. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.